This is Britain's first suicide bomber killed in Syria, filmed moments before he blew himself up at the gates of Aleppo prison. Abdul Wahid Majid is the 10th man from Britain known to have died on a Syrian battlefield. He's been portrayed as a dangerous and violent fanatic, adding to the authorities' fears that fighters will bring bloodshed back home.
They may be radicalised, they may be brutalised by some of the experiences that they see. Syria has become the jihadi destination of choice.
But to his family, friends and some Muslims, Majid was something else entirely.
My brother was not a terrorist. My brother was a hero. He made the ultimate sacrifice to save the Syrian people.
We've spoken exclusively to Majid's closest friend, who travelled to Syria with him.
I don't see how he's in any way promoting the idea of returning back to any Western country to carry out acts of terrorism.
Majid's journey started in Crawley, West Sussex, but it ended thousands of miles from home when he got behind the wheel of this truck bomb. This is the story of the man from Martyrs Avenue.
This is actually in the camp, and he's actually putting on a bit of a show for the children here.
It was days before Majid's family realised he'd been involved. He'd gone to Syria 6 months earlier with a nationwide aid convoy.
My heart sank. My mum and dad's heart sank. We were extremely grief-stricken when we saw that moment. Extremely shocked. And we were deeply, deeply worried.
Majid was a married man with 3 children. He had a steady job with the Highways Agency. His brother said Majid went to Syria because he wanted to make a difference.
Wahid saw that there was people being oppressed, people with no food, people being torn apart from their families, people being put in prison, and he just thought this was a great injustice.
His friend Rahid Mahmoud went with him. He says that they maintained refugee camps along the Turkey-Syria border. Mr. Mahmoud returned to the UK in January, while his friend stayed on.
We try to set up channels that maybe at some point pipes could be laid into, if generators could be set up, cables that could be tied to poles, these kind of ideas, and where we would improve the situation in a particular campsite.
Did Wahid ever fight?
No.
Did he ever talk about fighting?
No, just he was very, very busy with the work he was doing. There was periods of times when we were apart. When we were together, it was just the plight of the people, how we were assisting them, how we were helping them.
Majid's family and friends believe he launched an attack to free prisoners after reports of appalling abuses in the regime's jails. Rahid Mahmoud says his friend had been deeply affected by the war.
You'd see the glaze in his eye, you'd see that, there was almost a tear, because some of these stories are just shocking, what these people have gone through.
Majid's attack was carried out under the flag of the Al-Nusra Front, just one of several Al-Qaeda-affiliated groups. Local reports claimed no one else died and hundreds of prisoners escaped. The BBC has been unable to verify either of these claims. Afterwards, there were reports that Majid, who lived on the improbably named Martyrs Avenue, was linked to extremists in Crawley. As a younger man, he'd attended talks by the now-banned group Al-Muhajirun. Its leader, Omar Bakri Mohammed, has claimed Majid drove him to regular meetings in the town. Some of the men in that circle were later convicted in Operation Crevice, a massive MI5 and police operation which thwarted a plot to blow up targets in Britain. Majid was never implicated in the plot. His family say he left Al-Muhajirun behind.
He'd actually been in contact with Al-Muhajirun, and the views that they espoused did not marry with what his beliefs were. He stayed with them for a short time, and then he moved on.
Rahid Mahmoud's brother was jailed for his part in the Crevice plot, but he says neither he nor Majid were ever jihadists.
but I also invite you all over to the land of jihad.
While Majid's final days remain a mystery, other British men in Syria have been a lot clearer about their intentions. Such talk has triggered alarm back home. Police have arrested more than 30 people this year in investigations linked to Syria, including 4 people today. The former Guantanamo Bay detainee Muazzam Beg is among those being held. He denies charges of providing funding and terrorist training. There's mounting concern in Whitehall, where one senior official says Syria is the biggest security challenge since 9/11. MI5 is monitoring hundreds of men who are fighting in Syria. They fear blowback, the idea they could return home radicalised and battle-hardened and prepared to bring terrorism to the streets of Britain.
I understand the desire for people to want to help, to give that humanitarian assistance. But travelling out puts them at direct risk and indeed may mean that they come into contact with extremist organisations, sometimes linked to Al-Qaeda, the Al-Nusra Front, the so-called Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and how they may be radicalised, how in some ways they may be brutalised by some of the experiences that they see.
There was no fear of them coming back and doing.
But at Crawley's main mosque, some worshippers are sceptical that anyone fighting to bring down Syria's corrupt regime could be a threat to Britain.
As far as I'm aware anyway, no innocents were targeted. So although again, like, you could question what he did, but I wouldn't say he's terrorising anyone. Like, who would you, for example, the people who say it was an act of terrorism, who are they saying he's terrorising?
Mosque leaders say Muslims feel an obligation to help the Syrians, but they now fear that if they do, they'll be criminalised.
It's very conflicting, very confusing. The message is not clear. Every day new messages coming up, and it came too late.
Ministers deny any confusion. For them, it's quite clear.
People should not travel to Syria because of the risk that it poses to them and how actually it makes matters worse. It does not assist in terms of the Syrian people, who have said very clearly they don't want foreign fighters, they want humanitarian aid.
Back in Crawley, Abdul Wahid Majid's family are coming to terms with his death. For them, he died trying to do good, no matter how shocking it would appear to others. A lot of people would struggle to understand how driving a truck full of explosives into a target would truly help anybody.
If I can just probably put it like this, that if my brother had been a British soldier and there was British people in that prison, and the act he actually did, the act of heroism or bravery he actually did, I know he would have been awarded the posthumous Victoria Cross. My brother was not a terrorist. My brother was a hero. He was not a threat to the British public and never has been a threat to the British public.